Sonic Speed!
It's party time!
It's time to face the music. What's new, pussycats, and welcome to another Tiger Top 10. This time we're covering a topic that was inspired by Monster Dog 79, who suggested something music-based. And well, you can't get more music-based than this. The soundtrack of a game may not be the most important part, but it's usually what gives a game its atmosphere. That extra bit of oomph to get you pumped up for whatever's coming, or just to set a certain emotional tone when necessary. It's especially interesting to me to talk about this, since I actually make music myself on Bandcamp. So when a game has music I enjoy, you can be damn sure I'll take notice. Now, it's important to note that I'm only looking at the soundtracks themselves, not the game as a whole, because even the most terrible of games can have awesome music. And I also have one condition for this list, and that is that the game cannot rely mostly on licensed songs, meaning the majority of the soundtrack does have to be original to the game or series. Partly for variety's sake, and partly to stop me talking about Endless Ocean 3 countdowns on the trot. Other than that, it's the usual rules, one per series and only games I've played. So with that out the way, let's put the OMG in OST. I'm Proceleon, and these are my top 10 soundtracks. You know what I just said about bad games having good music? Well, here's the first example of that. The soundtrack of Skylanders Superchargers was a bit of a slow burner for me, I'll be honest. With my general dislike of the game itself, I wasn't really willing to give this one a listen. But after stumbling across the music online, I think I can safely say that I've changed my tune. What I think makes Superchargers' soundtrack different from the other games is just how much energy goes into each piece. Even the songs from previous installments have been remixed to give each one a bit more kick, resulting in what I'd honestly say are some of the best iterations of certain themes. For example, here's the creepy Citadel music from Spyro's Adventure, remixed into the dark vehicle zone in Superchargers. It really is an amazing blend that takes the orchestral ambience Skylanders is known for and adds just that little bit of extra percussion to spice things up. And all courtesy of Lorne Balfe, known for composition on Assassin's Creed Revelations, Terminator Genesis, and Home to name a few. The racing themes are especially impressive since the aforementioned changes to the music go almost perfectly with the fast-paced tone of the game. And that Chaos theme. Just that Chaos theme. And all this is coming from a game I really don't like as well. Probably best to keep the whole bad game, good music thing in mind. We'll be seeing some more of that. Coming up next is an indie game that needs no introduction. Its presence on a list like this is practically a given for many people, though for them I expect it would be a lot higher. Regardless of that, let's talk about Undertale. Undertale is a game that became notorious for its soundtrack. Soon after its release, you couldn't move for the amount of remixes of these tracks, and honestly, I don't blame them. When the game's not being calming and serene with tracks like Snowy, or downright goofy with things like Nyahaha, that's actually the name of one of the tracks by the way, it's producing some of the finest toe tappers I've ever heard in a game with this kind of art style. From the emotional rush of Heartache, to the absolute ludicrousness of Bone Strazzle, to the intensity of Spear of Justice. I'm also thoroughly impressed, even amused by the names of these tracks too. There is one, I kid you not, called Bird That Carries You Over a Disproportionately Small Gap. How does the even? But like I said before, this soundtrack is more than capable of letting itself chill for a bit. Just a moment listening to something like Confession will let you know that. However, no segment on Undertale would be complete without the Motherlode. And by that, I am of course referring to Megalovania. But there is one major fault in this soundtrack for me. For all its charm and its variance, it still does half of its music in chiptune, and honestly, chiptune's just not my thing. I strongly prefer the orchestral and rock segments over the chiptune instruments, and mixing the two together just doesn't sit right with me. Still, Toby Fox definitely did a great job on this one. Wow, I really can't believe I'm digging this old thing up. Oh boy, here we go. Hear that sweet swinging jazz. The Cat in the Hat doesn't waste any time in putting its music on full display, hitting you with that big intro you just listened to right off the bat, and keeping that pace going until the very end. Every single track in this game has a bounce to it, and perfectly complements the crazy world it draws inspiration from. I also adore how certain tracks use sounds from the environment to create their music, such as Grandfather Clock using actual clock sounds. Or remember seeing a comment on a YouTube posting of the soundtrack saying the music alone is better than the entire movie, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'd even say this music's nearly too good for the game it's in. I listened to either Venus Cat Trap or Chemistry Chaos, and I don't imagine Cat in the Hat. I imagine Spyro: A Hero's Tale. Have a listen to these two and tell me I'm wrong. And would you believe me if I said the composer behind these masterpieces is none other than Keith Leary? You know, the same guy who did the music for God of War 3? That's quite the jump to make if you ask me. But I'm glad this soundtrack turned out as it did. It's fun and jazzy as a game this crazy deserves to be. Huh, speak of the devil. Yep, it's him again. The soundtrack to A Hero's Tale may not be full of energy or catchy exactly, but skin me and call me a rug if this game doesn't have atmosphere. The original Spyro trilogy had good music too, but I think it's here Spyro started adding a bit more flavour to the mix. And the partial reboot of the soundtrack even came with a brand new theme that was treated as something of what we call a leitmotif, which is a recurring theme in music that associates itself with a particular idea or motive. In this case, it's basically the heroic theme of the game, and gets sprinkled into various other tunes throughout. This is probably the most effective use of a leitmotif I've seen in a good while, and the fact that most of the soundtracks use either the same or similar instruments really helps the consistency of the whole thing. This theme was even so consistent it made its way into the sequel, Shadow Legacy. I know it doesn't help A Hero's Tale's case in any way, I just thought I'd mention it. Outside of that, the tracks all make very good use of their percussion, that's always held steady by a well-defined beat. Dragonfly Falls has to be my favourite for this, simply because of that wood flute though. Gives me chills every time, and I'd listen to that any day. That, I would say, is the main strength of A Hero's Tale. Easy on the ears while playing, and still a joy to listen to when not playing. I'm not making any friends with this list, am I? Yeah, I know, Mighty Number 9 was kind of a flop and we should all feel bad for playing it, yada yada, we've heard this song before. Look, even I won't argue that its marketing campaign was awful, but just personally, I thought Mighty Number 9 was kind of alright. And that goes triple for the music. I might not have heard it at first due to the audio balancing, but I was absolutely on board once I caught the intro to Rush into the Mine. That theme alone got me interested in this game's music, and it all just snowballed from there. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I prefer most of these tracks over Mega Man's. And what catches my attention especially is that even though these songs have very similar instrument choices, they're each able to have their own distinct identity, using the bases of the Mighty Numbers for inspiration. Rush into the Mine that I just mentioned uses percussion that resembles industrial machinery, Beyond the Watery Vortex uses a smooth synth melody to sell the idea of a cold environment. And how dare I forget the bass line of the awesome headbanger that is RV's news report. Obviously the soundtrack still has its duds. Voltaic Dynatron and Desolate Highway come to mind almost immediately, but I gotta say for a game this infamous, I didn't expect to be liking the music as much as I did. And if you still hate the game with a burning passion, that's fine, more power to you. But if you have to call just one thing about this game mighty, let it be the music. Gonna be smiling now. If you've watched my previous countdowns, or even this one for that matter, you might remember how highly I praised Spyro the Dragon, but truth be told, his orange partner in crime was always in front when it comes to music. Coming courtesy of Andy Blythe and Martin Joustra, the soundtrack to Wrath of Cortex was definitely one of the highlights of my PS2 days. It keeps the high energy of previous installments such as Warped, but it adds a lot more versatility to its instruments and a lot more impact to its melodies. Every single track here became a regular earworm for my younger self, and honestly I wouldn't have it any other way. Even the music in stages with the same theme differ in tone greatly, and that's just amazing to see. I mean, here, just comparing a track like Seashell Shenanigans to something like Coral Canyon, and then changing again in H2O No. However, I will have to level why the Wrath of Cortex is this low considering the whole soundtrack is awesome. Well, almost all of it. I do tend to notice this in a lot of games I have, but I feel the soundtrack does fall down a bit towards the end. Don't get me wrong, there are some mighty fine pieces later on in the game. Atmospheric Pressure, for example, is my favourite boss theme, but most of the later tracks, especially the last 5 levels, just don't really do it for me musically. I prefer the early game music in Wrath of Cortex a lot more, whereas the following 4 games, I can't really say the same for. Where do I even begin with this one? No, seriously, where do I begin? Toy Story 2 for the PS1 has to be the most varied and unique soundtrack on this whole list, and it makes every single song memorable in its own way. In fact, in many ways, it's simply impossible to sum up the soundtrack as a whole, since each piece is so different, but gosh darn it, I'm gonna try! The soundtrack for the most part is extremely upbeat, and is perfect for the kind of epic adventure that you as Buzz are supposed to be going on. Every song fits its environment to a T, and the music even seems to go on a journey of its own. We start out confident yet inviting, with Andy's house giving us a warm orchestral welcome. Fast forward a few levels and we've got the somber atmosphere of the construction yard, and you already know I like sound effects as instruments, so to me the metallic clangs in this piece are top tier stuff. Towards the lair of Al himself we have the intimidating ambience of Elevator Hop, and outside in the pouring rain we get the catchy Tarmac Trouble, with shakers that never fail to hook me every time. Admittedly, though, it's not all sunny side up. Airport Infiltration, Al's Spaceland, and Slime Time don't really grab me in the same way, and I actually had to mark the game down for including You've Got a Friend in Me as its title theme. Apart from that, it's a good all-round soundtrack, and one I was happy to have listened to years ago. If you did not see this coming, where the hell were you during my intro? Yes, yes, all of the yes. If the music for Tekken Tag Tournament 2 doesn't get you pumped up, I don't know what will, because the beats in this collection are heavy. In fact, the drums in this game alone hit about as hard and as fast as the fighters themselves. But as intense as those drums are, it's the instruments surrounding them that really complete the setup. One match we might get the panicked bass line of Sega. And the next we could get the chilled out synth of Reflection. Or maybe you just need some joyous steel drums. Tekken's got you covered there too. That's what's enjoyable about Tag 2. It never really takes itself too seriously. The characters know it's a tournament, the game knows it's a tournament, and so should the music know it's a tournament as well. It's competitive, yet sporting. Tough and fast-paced, yet fun and bouncy at the same time. About the only time I feel it does take itself seriously is during the track entitled What You Will See, where the music just kind of forgets it's in Tekken for a bit. Tekken, are you okay? You're a bit quieter than usual. Is everything alright? Yeah, maybe this will work. Hey Tekken, have a Snickers. Better? And yes, while that unknown match does have its whiplash, I couldn't think of a more fitting setup. Nice work on the whole from the Tekken team. In the wise words of Captain Quark,
Where's the dubstep?
okay, I realize my inner EDM fan might be showing just a little bit, but I just cannot get enough of Sonic Transform's soundtrack. Sega in general is quite good when it comes to music, and I have yet to hear of a Sonic game that disappoints in that area. So how did they treat an entire Sega crossover? By taking Sonic's upbeat and light-hearted atmosphere, slapping some dubstep on it, then stuffing it into all the things. House of the Dead's Magician theme gets a brand new bass line and ups the tempo, turning the graveyard into a raveyard. Valley of Dreams keeps its uplifting synth melody, and also some bells to offer some much needed levity. And Carrier Zone. Dance drums plus guitar riff. Enough said. This kind of treatment is something I don't usually see in crossovers. Most games that cross series are quite content to simply reuse themes from the games included, with very little or sometimes no change at all. But Transformed goes through the trouble, the sheer effort of remastering these themes with extra kick, and that's something to be admired. I also love every single All-Star theme, especially the Xbox version and its Avatar theme. Compare. This is the theme as it sounds normally. And this is the version from Transformed. All the same though, I'm thoroughly impressed with the care that went into all of these tracks. If you gotta go fast, this is the soundtrack to do it to. Alright, we're almost at number 1, but as per usual, here's a few games that didn't quite make the charts. The PS1 version of Disney's Dinosaur. Mercury Meltdown Remix. Them's Fightin' Herds. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And Shark Attack. With most of the previous entries being very energetic and upbeat, you'd probably expect my number 1 to follow suit, but number 1 may surprise you. Surprised yet? From the composer of Final Fantasy, Blue Dragon's music isn't just atmospheric. It's practically adventure incarnate. Epic orchestral pieces like The Land Shark is Coming and Road to Gibraltar build tension and inspire a sense of scale throughout the world. In Gibraltar's case, rightfully so. And the addition of piano, even in the most intense of these tracks, amplifies whatever emotion the scene is going for. Be it somber in the calm waterside, or desperate in state of emergency. Classic isn't all Blue Dragon has to offer. Since the game has several areas that are mechanical in nature, many tracks also incorporate synth for their bass lines and melodies. Knock It Down, Giant Mecha, and Mecha Robocore Charge are some of my favorites. But there's one final ingredient in the soundtrack that keeps it together. In my mind, the meat of this whole thing has to be its rock pieces. They are used sparingly, but when they kick in, you know something big is going down. I can name both Nene's Paradise and The Seal is Broken as both having amazing guitar riffs, but of course the one people really remember is its main boss theme, Eternity. How can you not be pumped up after that? When Eternity started up for the first time, I knew this soundtrack was going to be one of my favorites. Nothing screams boss battle like some in-your-face 80s metal that's both incredibly out of place, yet at the same time suits the situation perfectly. It's cheesy and fitting at the same time, and it's perfect. So this has been a Tiger Top 10, and if you like what you saw, you can like, comment, subscribe, and leave a suggestion for the next Tiger Top 10. Make sure to ring that bell so that you're notified when I upload a new video. If you want my social links, they will be in the description below, and as always, I will see you pussycats in the next one.
You what you can see, reaching hands, you are blind, staring down eternity.